Hello, BookTube. I'd like to do a bit of a book chat. It's a chilly Monday morning here in Vermont. Gray, leaden skies, damp, cold air. I don't think it's probably about 40 degrees. But I have the house to myself, so it gives me a little bit of time to sit down and talk about what I enjoy, which in this case is Patrick O'Brian. The novel, the third one, in his Aubrey Maturin series, which is HMS Surprise. I read it in his folio edition, which I love to do, in papers, just because of the quality of the volume. It's a joy to hold. This is London, the Folio Society, 2009. And this originally came out, William Collins Sons and Company Limited, 1973. Has artwork representative of the story. The Folio Society is great at researching and including these images in their volumes. There's two sections of these images, and they enhance the reading experience. I really enjoy them. And another thing that enhances the reading experience is this companion volume that I use while I'm reading these, and it's Harbors and High Seas, an Atlas and Geographical Guide to the Aubrey Maturin novels of Patrick O'Brian. The second edition, Dean King with John B. Hattendorf. It's a paperback volume. It's getting a little rounded from wear. I use it quite a bit. It has a section on each of the novels. So section 3 here is HMS Surprise, a lively time in the Med and a surprise voyage to the East Indies. And you'll see here, this is pretty much the track on this novel. It's covers a lot of ground, a lot of ocean, a lot of both actually. So if you remember at the end of the second novel, Post Captain, there had been at the very end an engagement with the Spanish, and we think that Aubrey, who's been battling debt, and back then, don't forget, you went to prison for debt, his fortune was made. Well, because of bureaucratic wrangling and some technicalities, there's nowhere near the reward that it was thought to be. So while Aubrey does get enough money to relieve certain parts of his debt, he doesn't get enough. And he always also wanted to marry Sophia, his love interest. And her mother is not keen. And when this novel opens, Maturin ends up captured. Aubrey, who's been on a blockade duty, goes into Port Mahon, which is now controlled by the Spanish, and rescues him, but he's been terribly tortured and physically hurt. They get back to England. Aubrey ends up in debtor's prison, and Maturin is slow to recover. Now, Maturin has friends in the intelligence service. They managed to get Aubrey a ship, the HMS Surprise, but it already has orders, and those orders are to escort an envoy named Stanhope to India in the East Indies and all that. But this voyage, as you can see in the picture, is quite massive. So this is very much a lot of this at sea. Aubrey manages to get to the ship. They get underway. Have incredible adventures. It's a great sailing story, this one. You end up off near Rio de Janeiro. They end up battling the sea, the storms. They go from there, from Rio. They go now by Cape of Good Hope, Cape Town, Sumatra, Bay of Bengal, India, Madagascar, all that. But the big point is they run into finally this massive sea battle where Aubrey's up against a brilliant, very experienced French admiral. Does everything he can to save a fleet of Indiamen, merchant vessels, East India Company. And for his bravery and effectiveness, he's richly rewarded. And they make their way back to Europe. In the process, Maturin has met with his former love, and that's another story. I don't want to spoil any of this. So, the strength of the novel, increased pace since the last novel. Very much an even heavier nautical flair. We get to see Aubrey in his element fighting at sea. And I had mentioned earlier in one of my videos that Aubrey is based on Lord Cochrane, just like Captain Kirk and Horatio Hornblower are based on Lord Cochrane. Hopefully I can find the page. I sort of remember where it was here. All right, it took me a minute to find it, but here it is. Maturin's thinking about Aubrey and how to describe him. Typical sea officer. The phrase was not without meaning, but how to define it? In every gathering of sailors, you would see a few whom the rest seemed variants. But how few to color a whole profession, to color it, to set its tone. Offhand, he could think of no more than a dozen out of hundreds he had met. Dundas, Rue, Seymour, Jack, perhaps Cochrane. But no, Cochrane ashore was too flamboyant to be typical, too full of himself, too conscious of his own value, too much affected by that Scotch love of grievance. And there was an unfortunate title hanging around his neck, a beloved millstone. There was something of Cochrane in Jack, a restless impatience of authority, a strong persuasion of being in the right, but not enough to disqualify him, not nearly enough. In any case, it had been diminishing fast these last years. So even though it's an argument about how Aubrey's different than Lord Cochrane, it's also an indication how much alike they are, and that daring do, and that engagement in the moment under stress, and they're superior sea officers. They know their trade, and there's a lot of that in this book. A lot of it comes through. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's thus far my favorite of the three. Plenty more to go, and so I highly recommend it. And I'll be starting in on the fourth one. You can see in the shelf behind me here, the fourth one will be the Mauritius Command, and I'll be able to put this one here up. So sorry for standing out of the end of the camera like that, but we will be moving along to the next volume, and more Indian Ocean from what I can tell. So thank you, BookTube.